everybody. Mazel tov.
Thank you very much. You have simchas. All of you. In the right time.
Yeah, oh man.
All right. Get back to normal, right?
What's normal?
Parsha of the week. One of the marvelous things of the whole story of Yosef and his brothers is the fact that Yosef, how Yosef reacted after having met his brothers back, and how Yosef did not in any way follow through or keep a grudge on his brothers. On the contrary, he took them in and he tried every which way to assuage, to calm them down, to make them feel that he is their brother and that he is not, doesn't have anything against them, and that he actually gave them all the support in the most grievous time. He said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take care of you." And from this, we learn, the Rebbe brings it down in Tanya from the Zohar, that this is actually required. This is one of the primary lessons in Yiddishkeit, that you have to forego your own feelings, and you have to do that which is right. But there is a very profound, very deep message in this. It's not just being a nice person with nice midas. There's a pasuk, actually that pasuk is in next week's parsha, where Yosef says to his brothers, "Atem chashavtem olai ro, v'Hashem chashova l'toiva." You intended to do evil, bad to me, but Hashem had a different plan. Hashem intended it for good. This gives a completely different perspective of how Yosef HaTzadik, and as a result, how we are taught to view things that occur in the world. Particularly with the Jewish people. The difference between the world and the Jewish people, this small nation, the Jewish people, is that the Jewish people, while we are all acting in the world, we eat, we sleep, we go to work, we do everything superficially that is in conformity to the natural world, but in fact, we are acting in a different environment completely, not in a worldly environment. There is a saying from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov explains a posuk in Tehillim, which we all are familiar with from Shabbos. It says, "Ra'evim gam tzmeim nafshom hem tisatov." Ra'evim gam tzmeim, when they are hungry and they are thirsty, Nafshom behem tisatov. Their soul within them is in pain. This is a posuk in Tehillim, and the Kapitel Kuf Zayin, which we say before Shabbos, every Erev Shabbos before Mincha. So the Shem Tov explained this posuk by Pashta speaks about, and this Kapitel Kuf Zayin describes the 4 instances where a person has to bring a korban toida. And as a result of these 4 instances of this kapitel, when we go through a difficult situation, we make a bracha on the Torah, make a bracha what's called bichas hagoyme. The bichas hagoyme, there are 4 instances where you have to make a bichas hagoyme. And the same as in the time of Zamidas, you used to bring a korban toida. And one of the 4 instances is where a person was sick, God forbid, or in Riman's Meim speaks about if he was stranded in a desert and lost in a way, and lost in the desert, and he came back. So the Pasuk said, "Reiding on Smeim, they're hungry and they're thirsty. Nafshem em tisatov, their soul is catching its breath, it's losing itself." So the Baal Shem Tov attaches this pasuk, and Reiding on Smeim says, when people are hungry and thirsty, he's talking about eating. He's not hungry and thirsty. What do we think when a person is hungry and thirsty? That his body feels weak and his body is demanding food. Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's not the body. Nafshom behem tisatov. It is their soul that is looking for the food. Why the soul? Why does the soul need the food? And the answer is, the soul came down into this world to accomplish a mission. And the mission is to elevate and transform the world into a holy place. And there are many ways that the soul accomplishes its mission. One of the ways is that when the Yid consumes food, physical food from the world, and he does it l'shem shamayim, he eats with a bracha, and then he uses his food to do avodas Hashem, he elevates this food, which was, as the Alter Rebbe explains, was originally in Klipas Lega, he elevates it into Kedusha. And the soul thirsts for this avodah, to have an opportunity to do this. That's why he is hungry and thirsty. In other words, this gives us an exposure that the environment and the world that we live in, we are God's people, and we are on a constant mission to accomplish God's purposes in establishing a godly dwelling place in this world. So even though superficially, of course, we feel our body's needs and so forth, but behind it, and on a more significant level, it is actually a soul demand. It is actually a neshama thing. Everything that happens to a Yid happens on 2 levels. It happens on the worldly level and on the godly level. And the godly level is the primary thing, is the real thing. And this is what Yosef HaTzadik is saying to his brothers. Atem chashavtem l'ra, you thought, you intended to do evil to me, but in fact, you did good to me. You did not good to me, you did good for the entire nation, because as a result of what you did and sell me into Mitzrayim, as a result of that, the entire nation was saved from famine and extinction. And therefore, Yeshua is saying to them, despite the intent that you had, you were actually on a mission to save the Jewish people. And you accomplish this mission. And you deserve credit for this. And you deserve recognition for this. It's an amazing thing. They took their brother and sold him into slavery. And 20 years later, it turns out that the Rebbe maneuvered this whole thing. And it is to their credit that they were the instruments through which this great thing has accomplished. In everything that he does, there is this superficial intent, superficial involvement. As a matter of fact, since that we all have a nefesh habahamis and nefesh halikis. The nefesh habahamis, as you learned already just now, and you're learning all the time, I'm sure, but now we're beginning the Tanya. Nefesh habahamis actually is the first nefesh. This is the first nefesh. This is the first nefesh that we become aware of, because this is the nefesh that gives sustenance to the body. And we first become aware of the body, and then become aware of the soul. Therefore, everything that we do has to have some kind of a combination, some kind of a deal between the nefesh halikis and nefesh habahamis. You can't ignore completely nefesh habahamis. You have to give it its room. So everything that we do, especially in the early years before a person is in his body and elevates himself to completely to an intellectual, intelligent level, he has to deal with nefesh habahamis, and he has to, in a sense, make a deal with it. I'll give you a little covet. Let me learn a little Torah. I'll give you covet. You know what covet means? I'll give you a reward. I'll give you honor. I'll give you praise. In the meantime, let me learn a little Torah. So it's like a deal. So one may think that since that there is a nefesh habahamis is involved, and you're giving it in, therefore your learning Torah is not valuable. So that's why we have to understand that at all times, whatever a Yid does, there are these two elements at play. There is the means by which it gets accomplished in the world, and what is the real intent and what is the real accomplishment. So in effect, we are kind of fooling the world and saying, "Oh, we are really with you," but in fact, we're doing something completely different. Because if the nefesh habahamis allows us to learn Torah, the minute we learn a word Torah, that minute, that whole nefesh habahamis is completely negated. It's completely nizbach, because the Torah is not part of the world. It's a higher thing than the world. But at that point, it's too late today. The Shabbos can't complain. You made a deal. You let me learn. So you have no choice. This is how we sneak in. This is how we learn. The Rambam explains, how do we get a child to learn? A child is interested in playing and in candy.
Promise and reward.
Excuse me?
Promise and reward. Candy.
Promise and reward. Do you give him a candy? Exactly. Give him a candy. So some people will say, "Oh, you're fooling the child." You're not fooling the child. You're not fooling the child. Because this child, deep down, has a neshama also. And he also understands, and he also has a feel for this. But he can't overcome, in his childishness, he can't overcome his involvement in play and candy. the children in olden days, and even today, our children who grow up in a Jewish home, even in their play is involved a Torah, a theme, a Jewish theme. There's a story where the Rebbe Rashab, the Friedrich Rebbe's father, he had an older brother, Reb Zalman Aaron. When they were little children, they're 5 years old, 4, 5, 6 years old, they used to play also. And what was their game? Among other things, they played Rebbe Chassid. One of them was a Rebbe, one of them was a Chassid. And the Chassid would come to the Rebbe for a tikkun, with the Yechidus. It was a whole game. So they were playing, and the truth of the neshama was already coming through. This is true in everything that he does. This is reminiscent of what there's a Gemara, I mentioned it a lot lately. There's a Gemara that says that Naisin Prutal Oni means tzedakah. A person puts some money into tzedakah, gives money to tzedakah, and he says, "Am nasi yichibni." He's doing it, and he has a condition. He's doing it so that my son lives. In other words, because he needs a certain yeshua, he needs help, he needs a certain bracha. He says, I'm doing it so that I have this bracha. Or he gives tzedakah so that I'll be successful in my business. Or my trip is going to be successful. Whatever it is. So what would you think? This is not real tzedakah. He doesn't do it l'shem shamayim. He's not doing it to do a mitzvah. He's doing it in order to get the benefit of the mitzvah. What does the Gemara say? Harizah tzadik gomer. He's a tzaddik gomer. Doesn't mean that he's a tzaddik gomer all over. In this particular deed, he did a mitzvah, and it's a real mitzvah. It's a real mitzvah. And the explanation is, why is it a real mitzvah? Even though he had ulterior motives or real reasons. It's a real mitzvah because this inyan that he is giving it, because he wants to, he's looking for the benefit that he needs a bracha for his business or for his child. This is only a superficial alibi. No, an alibi, it's an excuse for the nefesh habahamis. But really, deep down, he wants to give tzedakah. And the clear proof is that if chas v'shalom he fails, the condition is not fulfilled, he never regrets. No regrets, never has charota for having given tzedakah. That he never regrets, even though he gave it on a condition. But he doesn't ask back. Oh, it didn't work. Give me the tzedakah back. That thing a yid will never do, because he always really wants to do tzedakah mitanevis. But he lives in the world, and he has a certain challenges. This gives us a perspective on our own avodah. It is very common that one would reflect what am I doing? What is the value of my activity? I'm learning. Even though Moshe Yeshua Bacha learns, and another person does whatever they do. I don't really fully understand what I'm doing. I don't have a full sense of the value and the purpose for what I'm doing it for. I don't really mean it in a full sense. I would like to succeed, but I don't really know what I want to succeed about. And as a result, one thinks, how can it be? How can I possibly be successful when I don't have a full-fledged view of what I'm trying to accomplish? Lahavdil, a person goes to school, to secular, he goes to university. He is studying to get a certain degree, to become an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. He has a very clear, defined goals, and everything that he does is what leads him to that goal. So in a certain sense, he knows what he is doing. He sits in yeshiva and he learns Torah. The extent to which he understands the Torah is very limited. It's not that he learns, he fully understands what he learns. He knows that he understands it very limited, to a limited degree. And then, on top of that, what am I going to do with this? What does it mean I'm learning? What am I learning? What is its practical application? How does that change me? How does that change my world? And even though, Baruch Hashem, everybody knows, there is something real to this, something good, and so forth, and he doesn't get discouraged to the point where he doesn't do it, but still, it bothers him. And some discouragement there is, and sometimes he goes ups and downs. Sometimes he's in a mood, sometimes he's not in a mood. We all have ups and downs. So we have to understand this very important principle when it comes to a Jewish life, particularly when it has to do with Torah and mitzvahs. These arguments and these points would all be valid if our activities would be exclusively on one level. It was all exactly what we thought, what we are aware of, what our group and Nefesh Abamis agrees with. This is what we are doing. And if this was all that we are doing, this is the whole content and the whole power of what we're doing, then we would say, yes, what are we doing? I'm doing it, half-messed. I know what I'm doing and I don't know what I'm doing. I want to do it and I don't want to do it. What's going on? The absolute truth, however, is that while we are doing what we are doing, Hashem is doing what He is doing. Just as in the case of Yosef's brothers, they were selling Yosef into slavery. Hashem was involved together with them. There was something very profound happening there. You've learned previously in Pashas Vayigash 2 weeks ago, where Rashi explains, Rashi says that Yitzchok Avinu was still alive when Yosef was sold into slavery. And Yitzchok knew, B'nevuah, he knew that Yosef was alive. Yankov thought that Yosef was killed, died. And Yankov actually was mourning for Yosef. But Yitzchok knew that Yosef was really alive. So why didn't he tell Yankov, hey, listen, Yosef is alive? He didn't tell him because when his brothers sold him, they made a chayrim for anyone who's going to inform Yankov about it. They made a chayrim, anybody who's going to inform Yankiv about it. And this chayrim was took hold, and not only that, Rashi says over there, an amazing thing, V'shitvu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yemo. They made Hashem a shooter, a partner in this chayrim, that Hashem himself also agreed nobody should tell Yankiv about it. And that's why Hashem didn't tell Yankiv. Yankiv, after all, was a Novi. And Yitzchak knew and Yankiv didn't know. In other words, there was something much greater happening way beyond what met the Yankiv. So Hashem, in everything that He does, there is Hashem's direct involvement in this. Everything that we have to kind of deal with the Nefesh Abamis, but the Nefesh Olekis is right behind it. And the ultimate thing, the real thing that's happening, is not what we think is happening, but what Hashem sees is happening. That's the real thing. The Gemara says, that whenever a Yid sits and learns, whether it's koire, he learns Chumash, Tanakh, Teresh B'Ksav, Shoyne, he learns Mishnayos or Gemara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu koire v'sheina knegdei. Hashem is doing the same thing with him, is learning the same thing that he is learning. So this has many ramifications, but one very direct and immediate meaning of this is that the impact and the power of this learning that we are doing is not the power of what a human being is able to learn and understand. It's the power of Hashem. Hashem is doing it through us. The Torah that we learn is Hashem's Torah. And the mitzvah that we're doing is Hashem's mitzvah. Hashem has appointed us to do the mitzvah here so that when we do the mitzvah, Hashem is participating in this mitzvah. This is the real thing that's happening. And this is illustrated in this story with Yitzchak, with Yosef. And this is why Yosef said, I cannot hold it against you. Because what happened here is not what you did, but what Hashem did. The fact is, this has been proven time and time again. Every student, everyone who attempted to learn Torah and to get into Torah, get into Yiddishkeit, can attest to the fact that even though the actual knowledge, the actual learning that he acquired is very limited, but the effect of it is unlimited. The effect of it is unlimited. Everybody will tell you, and I'm sure each one of you already has that experience. You come to yeshiva, and sit and you learn. And you learn a Mishnah, a Chumash, this, and that. And you're constantly saying, what am I doing? What am I doing? What's this about? What is the kasha? A few months pass, a year passes, and you go back and you try to think back what you thought, the questions that you had a year ago, and the difficulty that you had in young years. You can't even understand where you were coming from. You didn't become such a great scholar that you know all the answers now, all of a sudden. The questions disappeared, because you came closer to the true world, to the reality. to look at Jewish life from a worldly perspective, it really doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Take the Jewish people. Look at the Jewish history. Jewish history is a continuous story of Rahman al-Islam, of all kinds of different difficulties. I don't want to go beyond that. One thing after another after another. Even, but we celebrated yesterday Hey Tevis. You know the story with Hey Tevis. You know the story with Hey Tevis. I'm sure Rabbi Lipsky told you about it. You heard it, whatever it is. It was a very serious thing. It was a very serious thing. And it was a very painful thing. For those of us who were present then at the time when the Rebbe sat in Fabringen and spoke about it, we all recognize that even though our sensitivities are limited, but so clearly from the Rebbe, that this was something which was of paramount significance, unlimited significance. And it was a very painful period. And then we had to go through the pain and fight it, and so in court, we had to go to Goyish court to get it out. This is something which repeats itself all the time in Jewish history, throughout the time, all the time. So what is it all about? What are you fighting about? The answer is that we have a completely different perspective. We see the world totally differently. We're not looking for worldly success. That's insignificant. Success as defined by the world is insignificant to us. The world, we know, and it's in its own, so to speak, from its own perspective, from its own value, has no significance whatsoever. Its significance, and it's very significant, because there's a means to do Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe was asked. This was a discussion for many years. By some people, it's still a big discussion. Which rotates around which? Does the sun rotate around the earth, or does the earth rotate around the sun? So, from a physical, worldly perspective, the earth rotates around the sun. Why? The sun is much, much bigger than the earth. And the gravitational pull of the sun is much stronger than that of the earth. And therefore the earth rotates around the sun. This is how they came to a conclusion, and they have all kinds of calculations to say, to put the entire solar system on that basis. So the Rebbe was asked the same question. The Rebbe wrote a letter, and he said like this. He says, from a scientific point of view, nobody can determine which rotates around what. Because Einstein came and he completely broke the entire model. It's a scientific model. When he says two bodies rotating in space, it's impossible to determine which rotates around what, which. Because the theory of relativity, everything is relative. If something is moving, so it's either this thing moving this direction or this thing moving this direction. There's absolutely no way to determine which one is which one. Therefore, we have to come to it from a different perspective. You have to come to it from a perspective, what would make sense in terms of value? Huh?
What's the significance of Bir Hasachama then? Because I thought that means the sun returned back in its place. Obviously, the
Of course, I mean, the Gemara says that. I'm saying, what don't make sense? The earth is the place where there's a human being. The earth is a place where there is a yid. The earth is a place where there was matan Torah. The earth is a place where you can do mitzvahs. The earth is a place that has a real godly presence. What's the sun? Of course, the servant has to rotate around its master. The whole thing is created for the sake of all the things that we can do on earth. So we have a completely different perspective. We have a different sense of parameters by which we understand the world. We understand the world from a godly perspective. Why did God create the world, and where do we see more godliness? This has to translate by each one of us individually. First, I spoke about in terms of our own being, not to be discouraged and all that. But this also translates not only an individual of we should judge our activities on the basis of what we accomplish in a measurable worldly sense, but we have to judge our activities on the basis of what is Hashem doing through us. A mitzvah is Hashem's mitzvah, which lasts forever, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. This is an eternal thing, and it has its own intrinsic value. We have to also see this same principle from a broader perspective. We have to learn to view the entire world from that perspective, from the perspective that there is a godly purpose in the world, and we have to be able to see, so to speak, a godly message, a godly quality in everything that exists in the world. Like you mentioned, we say Birchas Hachama. We recognize the new moon, the Rosh Chodesh. We make a bracha on Rosh Chodesh, and the entire and the 4 seasons. Now Pesach and Sukkot. Pesach and Sukkot are 2 Yom Tovim that were established in the Torah to recognize spring and fall. The major changes in the yearly cycle. And perhaps we could say, most importantly, it has to translate in what the Alter Rebbe explains in terms of Ahavas Yisrael. Ahavas Yisrael, it's explained in Chassidus that Ahavas Yisrael is, in the Chassidus, in Gemara, Ahavas Yisrael is the primary inyan in Jewish life. And this is not merely because it's nice to be a good friend to your fellows. Ahavas Yisrael is the most profound element in Avodas Hashem possible. Through Ahavas Yisrael, you get to Ahavas Hashem. What is the basis for Ahavas Yisrael? The basis for Ahavas Yisrael is to recognize that a Yid is not a body, but that there's a godly soul in him. And to look at a Yid from the perspective the way Hashem looks at a Yid. What a Yid means to Hashem. And what is the value of a Jewish life in this world? The Gemara says, Afilu Pesha Yisrael, Malei Mitzvahs Kerimim. That even the most sinful of a Yid, Pesha Yisrael, Malei Mitzvahs Kerimim is full with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. You know what a pomegranate? pomegranate. How do you say pomegranate in Russian? Granat. That's right. How do you understand that? Is the Pesach Yisrael is a sinful Yid? How is it full with mitzvahs? The answer is that he has one intent and Hashem has another intent. He has one intent and Nefesh Elikis in him has another intent. And through him, all kinds of things occur in the world that he never intended to occur. And they're all mitzvahs in the Rebbe. The Rebbe fulfills his mission through him. A Yid represents in the world not another human being. It represents a godly spark. And every action from a Yidden has to be viewed and judged from that perspective. This is why the Mishnah says, they have to give a person the benefit of the doubt. You have to always look at a person with a good eye. And you have to we say every day, before we go to sleep, we say the Rebbeinu Shalom, that we forgive everything to a Yid. Nobody should suffer because of me. Why? Because whatever a Yid has done ultimately has a good result. Could be a little further, could be 22 years later. And you find out, oh look at this. This is what happened as a result. This is a most important, element in understanding Jewish life and understand Yiddishkeit. I always explain to people who grew up, so to speak, in a non-Jewish environment, that they should understand that the real tshuva is not just to learn how to put on tefillin and keep Shabbos and eat kosher. This is something which is relatively easy. You have to fight with your own inclination, okay, but you can overcome it. But this is not such a fundamental change in a person's mentality. The real tshuva is when that there's a Jewish way of looking at things, which is a fundamental change in the mentality of a person. To look at a person from the perspective that this is the Meibershen's child, that he has a godly soul, and you can't, chas v'sholom, wish him ill. This is Meibershen's child. To see the world from a godly perspective and see everything that happens in the world, see the godliness that's happening in the world. It says by the Beis Hamikdash, when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis Hamikdash, after he finished building the Beis Hamikdash, and they said the Chvoid Hashem Molid as Habayis, the whole, there was Gili Hashem, Gili Elikus in Beis Hamikdash. Shlomo HaMelech was elated. Shlomo HaMelech said a brief prayer, a tefillah. And in this prayer he said two things. He said, when a goy will come, a nochri, will come to you over here in this house and ask you for whatever he asks you, you should grant him everything that he asks you. Yes, Hashem, you should grant everything that he asks. And then he said that when a Yid comes to this house and he asks you, you should give him according to what he deserves. Mm-hmm. So it's explained, what is this? Why does Shlomo Melech make that distinction? A guy comes, you should give him everything that he asks for. A Yid, you should give him according to his desert. So he said, Pshat is, because a guy does not have that element to recognize the godly presence in the world. So if he is not granted what he wants, he gets angry at God. A Yid doesn't get angry at God. A Yid knows that Hashem does, this is the right thing. How, what, when, we don't know. But we don't always need to know. Now, maybe we want to know, maybe we should help that we should all see it, that it should be beginning, it should be open and obvious. But a Yid has an inherent acceptance, what's called bitul, an inherent recognition of the truth of godly presence in the world. That is the most important thing to him. Knowing that whatever happens, whatever he does, Hashem is with him, this is what gives it all its value. He doesn't need anything more. So therefore, Shlomo Melech said, when a Yid comes over here, you should grant his prayer, but only if he deserves it. So because a Yid, he has to stay online, he has to recognize Hashem in a completely different way. A guy will not recognize Hashem unless he gets everything he wants. A Yid recognizes Hashem whether he gets it or he doesn't get it. Because the primary thing to a Yid is to recognize Hashem from the world from Hashem's perspective. So this ultimately is the big lesson, the big message over here from Yosef HaTzadik. Not as it seems superficially, Yosef was such a nice man and he didn't have a grudge in his brothers. Much, much greater, much deeper than that. It is the message that we have to see everything from a perspective of it is in God's world that it's happening, and it's happening because God is happening and is directing it to happen. And this is true regarding what happens to us, and this is true regarding what we do. That everything that we do, Hashem is with us, and Hashem helps us, and Hashem makes it significant, much more than anything that we can possibly imagine. And again, as I said before, the proof is in the fact that we sit in yeshiva and we learn for a year, and our mind opens up and our heart opens up, and we literally become different people. We get a completely different sense of life, different sense of value, different sense of different intent, different hopes, different aspirations. We elevate to a different level. This is not just acquiring knowledge, a tool for something. This is building the neshama. Learning Torah is building the person. It makes no difference what he learns. It's building the person, building the holiness in the person. And therefore, I want to conclude with, as we usually say, with a bracha, that we should all succeed in this effort, and chas v'sholom, never to allow ourselves to be discouraged. If you have a difficult day, the next day will be better. If you have a difficult hour, the next hour will be better, for sure. And also remember, even the difficult day has its purpose. Even the difficult day has its purpose. As it says, that about tshuva, when a person has a difficult day and the next day is better, that's because he did tshuva, right? About tshuva reaches higher than a tzaddik. That means that the negative that he experienced the day before has now brought him to a higher level than he would have gotten if he didn't have it. with Rebbe's help, not everybody should, that we should all be encouraged and strong in our resolution, resolve to grow, resolve to absorb, to take in, swallow and digest everything that one learns, and accept the Kedusha of Torah, so that the Torah becomes food for our neshamas. And that way we can open up, as I said, our minds and hearts to live a godly life in Mitzvah and be successful in everything that we do.
Amen.
Amen.